Hey, welcome. I'm Kristine Weber. I'm the founder of Subtle Yoga, and I love to help mature yoga teachers let their wisdom shine. I've been training yoga teachers since 2003. I can't believe it's been 20 years. And I've been training mental health clinicians since 2008, 2009, I think. So, I love yoga as a mental health tool. I think it's an incredible tool for mental health. I also think it's an incredible framework for mental health when you go deeper into the yoga philosophies and all the practices of yoga. Okay, so today what I'm talking about is the idea that your lungs are not these isolated organs that just do their thing, rather, they're integrated with our whole being. And so I don't know if you've been following some of my writing, but I've been writing a lot of blogs about breathing lately. And one of the things that happens is people kind of extract the breathing practices from the tradition. So you see all sorts of people teaching all sorts of different kinds of breathing out there, and which is fine. Like, people benefit from it, of course. But one of the things to understand, like, this is such a simple point, and I think it's so profound, and I think we all need to understand it, which is that your breath doesn't happen in a vacuum. Like, it happens because of your body, and your lungs don't have any muscles. Your lungs are just these little sacs, and alveoli, little tiny little sacs that have to exchange the gases, and the bronchioles and the bronchi. I mean, your lungs are your lungs are just organs. They move because of your muscles. And what are the muscles? Of course, the primary muscle is the diaphragm. Understanding how inhaling presses this down, and we can maximize that, or maybe not maximize, it's not the right word, optimize that. And then understanding the exhale is a recoil. It's usually not, doesn't involve a lot of musculature, but it can. And having that musculature prepared is a good idea for when you need it. And we prepare it through asana practice and through pranayama. And so you have all these secondary and tertiary muscles of respiration, right? The intercostals are muscles of respiration, the external and the internal intercostals, depending on exhaling or inhaling. And then you're using the pectoralis minimus, medius. I can't remember what the secondary pectoralis muscle up here. And sometimes you even have to use some scalenes and the SCM, like that's all part of breathing. And guess what? Your back, muscles in your back are part. So the musculature is what matters, right? So if you want to practice breathing practices, that's great. But asanas, whatever they are going to help you prepare. So here's something I want to show you today, just a little tip to help you work with your inhale and kind of optimize it. People talk about over breathing a lot, and like we're all over, okay. That doesn't mean that your muscles shouldn't be optimized for breathing, right? Using your muscles makes a lot of sense because they're the ones that make your lungs move. Okay, so one of the things that I think is fun to play with is this idea that your arms are an extension of your lungs, and just visualizing these beautiful lungs on either side of the chest. And that when you inhale, your arms start to move too. Your arms start to be involved in the process. So you could do this like in mountain pose, right? And you could use an inhale where the arms are expanding. And maybe turn your palms up. I'm going to back up just a little bit. And on the exhale, the arms just start to relax back down. They just start to descend, right? So how do you work with that? On the inhale, what happens is that the rib cage starts to expand out to the sides, and you get this pushing from the armpits into your arm. The armpits like push your arms away from your body. So you want to kind of play with that and have fun with that. I mean, it's kind of like at the root of a lot of the Qigong practices too, the Chinese yoga practices, where there's a movement that happens because of the energy, right? And the energy is part of the breath, right? The energy rides on the breath. The prana rides, or the chi rides on the breath. So you could do this in mountain pose. You could play with the breath, inhaling, the arms do whatever, maybe go up over your head, but they don't have to. You could do it in a warrior one pose, and I'm not showing the whole pose, but just the arm part, right? Just playing with it. You could do it in a warrior two pose, right? The arms floating up and down. You can, of course, do it in mountain pose. You can do it when you're on your knees in Vajrasana, lightning pose, when the arms float up. You can do it seated. So there's so many different ways you could play with this movement of the arms that is predicated upon the movement of the breath. I was talking to a friend who works in cardiac rehab teaching yoga, and she does this a lot with her folks that are in cardiac rehab, but she does it tiny. Like she brings the hands in and just does a little bit of movement. And we get this idea in the yoga world in the West that the bigger, most spectacular pose is the best, right? I mean, just look at Instagram. What is Instagram yoga except big, spectacular poses with like lots of comments that say beautiful and big, and that's nice. Like, I'm not, I don't mean to knock people who want to do big, spectacular yoga poses. That's their right, and have fun. Have at it. Have a good time. The point being that what's much more spectacular is what's going on inside. So if you're doing a tiny little movement and you're feeling deeply into how all those muscles are moving and giving you space for your lungs to do their job, that's a fantastically spectacular internal observation. Just doesn't look as good on Instagram, right? But it's a spectacular observation to have. And so I invite you to play with these ideas, whether it's mountain pose or warrior poses or seated, where you're feeling the rib cage lift up and out and allowing the arms to expand from that, and feeling the arms as if they're extension of your lungs, as if they're your wings, and that's really where we start to learn how to fly. I mean, sorry for the bad metaphor, but it's true, because when we are tuned in to to these deeper processes in the body, when we can really have a sense of how we breathe, how we want to breathe, then we have much more agency over, we have much more control, we have much more agency in terms of being able to deal with physiological issues as they arise, but also with mental, emotional stuff, right? Physiological meaning like, oh, I feel really tired, I want to change that. Okay, you have your breath to change it. Emotional stuff, I feel really anxious. Oh, well, your breath is there to help you change that. So you have more agency when you are really good friends with your breath and these beautiful lungs and all the amazing respiratory musculature that supports the whole practice. So thank you so much for listening. Thanks for being here. I would love to hear from you. What other practices would what would you like me to talk about? What other things about yoga are you interested in? I would love to, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear what your interests are. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll see you next week. Lots of love.